Okay, morning everybody. I've got a few different things I want to cover with you. I know you'll have some questions about. I'll try to address those ahead of time as much as I can. Continue to have great positive progress on both fronts of the Baptist Hospital Agreement. One, I've asked Commissioner Kohler, and we're in conversations with the county administrator about pushing our agenda item at BOCC back 2 weeks. We're so close to the finish line of having the exact numbers. When you go back to March of 2024, when the BOCC first entertained this, the conversation was more philosophical because, of course, we didn't have exact demo numbers and all of that. So considering we're so close to having all of that, instead of us doing up to 2 million or speculating on that, what our hope is that city staff and county staff get together and we'll come up with something a little more detailed of exactly what the ask will be. I think that's better for the county, certainly better for us. And I just felt that to have a meeting on Thursday without that number might have been more conversation and rhetoric, but I don't know that it was going to be nearly as productive as just waiting a couple more weeks and having all of that information exact. So I appreciate them working with us. I believe our staff and county staff's getting together on Monday. So we, as of right now, the deliberations for the oral presentations for demolition bids is at 9 a.m. on Thursday. The deliberations from the selection committee are at 2 o'clock. So we should have the winning bid by 3 o'clock on Thursday. So from there, obviously meeting as soon as possible with county staff with that information to try to formulate something for action for the county commission. So I've requested that delay, and I think the county staff and certainly Commissioner Kohler agrees with that. I think we're all going to be in a much more knowledgeable and better position to try to get this thing across the finish line by just delaying that a couple weeks. Also, concurrent to that, we continue to work on our donation agreement with Baptist. We feel very, very good about where we are right now. We're down really to the last few nuanced things, and we appreciate Baptist and their team working closely with Adam and his team in the city attorney's office to get us where we are. So it would be too early to give you a definitive date, but what I would tell you is we are targeting a completed donation agreement this month. So we can be working on both of those things at the same time, obviously, as we are doing. But if everything goes well, hopefully we'll have all of our funding secure and the donation agreement in place at some point in April. So we're very, very excited about that and enthusiastic about getting this thing across the finish line. We're excited to announce 2 new hires with the city. First, our port director. As you guys know, director positions are pending city council approval, so this will go at the next meeting. You'll see it on the agenda when it comes out today. That we've hired retired Rear Admiral Lance Scott. He's spent 31 years in the Navy and has a Bachelor in Science in Marine Transportation from the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, a Master in Arts and National Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College, and he last served as the commander of Patrol and Reconnaissance Group in Norfolk, Virginia. And he was responsible for manning, training, and equipping the Navy's Maritime Patrol Forces, which is 6,500 personnel. So certainly, I believe a coup for us to have somebody of a 1-star and that level of experience helping what I really see as the beginning of a significant new era in port operations, both on the cargo side and on the sailing and technology side. So very excited to have Lance on board with us, pending that vote on Thursday. And then for Constituent and Legislative Affairs Liaison, we've hired Dustin Rutherford. He is also a military background, retired Army captain, was a Ranger and Airborne qualified, served as a platoon leader, executive officer, and company commander. Most recently served as a congressional aide and worked diligently and heavily on Veterans Advocate and field representative, and was a field representative for Congressman Barry Moore in Alabama's 1st Congressional District for 2 years, and has moved back to the area. So we're excited to have Dustin on board, and I believe he will begin on Monday. So happy to take any questions on that. I just want to give a big shout out to our Fireboat 1 crew. We got a call Sunday evening around 6:45 about a possible capsized sailboat 2 miles south of the I-10 bridge. As they were making their way to the scene, they got confirmation it was a canoe that had capsized. Arrived at the area, rough seas, as you guys recall, on Sunday evening, not probably ideal to be out there, just after 7 o'clock, and spotted 2 men in the water wearing life jackets. The men were using a cell phone's light to signal. 2 were obviously cold, but they had no injuries. So that PFD crew, Captain Jed Martin, firefighters Alex Dingle, Jackson Allenbaugh, and Labardo Cisco, and a huge thank you also to Battalion Chief Michael Slater, who provided some extra eyes and guided the Fireboat 1 crew all the way from the north part of Scenic Highway. Good reminder to check on those weather forecasts, obviously, before we get out on the water, but it's also just another story of heroism from our team that jumps in and tries to, and in this particular case, likely save lives. Just a clarification and some update. You guys saw the extreme weather, or reported on the extreme weather. Obviously, we had quite a wild last 48 hours in terms of the rain. And we wanted to give some clarification on the airport closures on Sunday. We had more than 5 inches of rain that was recorded at the airport in less than 2 hours. When you see that type of flooding, sometimes there's an immediate presumption that we say, well, our stormwater must be lacking. During a Category 2 hurricane, and there's water on the ground, no one says, well, the city's stormwater is lacking. I don't know what stormwater systems are built to take 5 inches of rain in less than 2 hours, but when you have that type of weather event, certainly there's going to be standing water. As far as the airport goes, that meant flooding on the runways, and it took about an hour and a half for the waters to subside and allow the airport crews to remove the debris. So we were stuck for 90 minutes just waiting on being safe enough to go out and clear debris. So that weather, of course, hampered traffic that was already in flight, and then, of course, lightning was a factor. Taxiway lightways were struck, which in turn degraded the taxiway lighting system. So obviously, as you guys know, it takes a lot to shut down an airport, and that's what we were faced with Sunday into Monday. So we had approximately 50 flights delayed or canceled Sunday afternoon and into Monday. So that's kind of the lay of the land of what was happening out at the airport. Also, while we're talking airport, we've launched a new website for folks and stakeholders to update on the terminal expansion and modernization. So for you guys in the media and citizens interested in what's going on out there, we wanted to be able to narrate that to you guys pretty regularly. So transformpns.com. It's a one-stop shop for tracking our timeline, viewing renderings, and then accessing data outlining how we arrived at this point. So we just wanted to have kind of an easy, convenient place where, as this project, as you guys know, will be a multi-year project, we want to continue to have a one-stop shop to allow people to see how things are going. Of course, you guys know 104% growth over the past decade, a $2.3 billion economic impact is our airport to our community, and we had more than 3 million passengers in 2024. Partnership for some attainable housing. I was able to go last week to 2300 West Jackson Street to see the progress being made on that site. If you recall, that was the 3 scattered sites that we had partnered with the Home Community Land Trust and the Home Builders Association. 2300 West Jackson Street, 1941 North E Street, and 113 North Spring Street were the 3 properties that we put in the trust, and our partners, we're very appreciative for. Home Builders Association took this on as a project to increase our affordability in the community, and so those are well underway, under construction. We don't have the exact timeline yet, but again, those are all. I know because I've seen them both Spring and 2300 West Jackson are fully in the air and should be done in a relatively short order. So we're excited, and I know I'm sure we'll certainly have an event to celebrate that once those are ready to go. And that, you recall, the Community Land Trust is that mechanism that allows those 3 homes to remain affordable in perpetuity based on the CLT model. Welcome sign, we were supposed to, even despite maybe causing confusion, to do a serious event on April Fool's Day. We were going to try to do the welcome sign on April Fool's Day because that's how the schedule worked out. But with all of that weather, getting all that the pieces of sign in from Texas, I believe, has proved difficult. So the soonest it would be like the end of this week, and I think that's unlikely. I would probably be assuming that it would be the early part of next week that we'll have it put in. So as you guys drive by, you'll continue to see progress happening there. They've already painted the concrete structure. There's landscaping to go in. So progress continues at full bore. But in terms of the official lighting of the welcome sign, we're looking at. We'll let you guys know something today in the media of when that's going to be. But we're looking at probably a early next week situation. And then just a few quick hitters, reminders. 100th anniversary events kick off at noon tomorrow for the Sanger Theater, including a street party on Sunday. We do have that Jefferson Street Garage temporary closure Sunday and Monday from overnight, 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. for annual maintenance. And then we've got myself and our staff and Jared Moore will be doing a District 4 Town Hall at Vickery Center at 6:30 p.m. this Thursday. So make sure anybody from any district is more than welcome to be there. We'll give as many updates as we can, and we'll have our department directors there as well to help give updates on the things important to our citizens. So that is everything I've got, and happy to take your questions.
Mayor, the new port director, I guess could you talk a little bit more about what stood out about Admiral Scott?
Yeah. Yeah, I alluded to, I think this is a really exciting time in the port, given the American Magic project, given the other interest that as our phone starts to ring and our email starts to populate around the interest that is catalyzed by American Magic, as well as continuing to have solid cargo operations on the south half of the port. If you go back and look at the Moffitt-Nichols study, which before the interview Admiral Scott had read, was that it calls for exactly that, to have a traditional cargo use type port on the south end, and then development of marine tech and research on the north end. I think we're well on our way to that, and certainly Admiral Scott has been in situations and working with staff significantly larger at a larger scale. I don't have any concern that he'll be able to help manage this amazing growth and time at our port. And what we really need is, I believe, is as we continue to grow, solid operational structure, and that includes communication with our existing vendors. You guys hear the beat on the street about the port sometimes. You say you're going to do one thing, so it must mean you're now not supporting cargo, or vice versa, or there's a cargo use, and and there's a lot of misperception. I think that a lot of that rests with good, solid communication out of the port about the future of where we're going, and because 80% of that is usually miscommunicated or misunderstood. And so it goes without saying, as you'll see his full resume, I have the utmost confidence that Lance will be able to rein that in, bring us some best practices, and really get us functioning at a high level operationally. So very, very, very excited to have him. Yeah, it was easy today. Nothing else?
I was going to ask also the position of constituent services. Is that a new role?
No, that's Alex Smith's former role.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so policy and working constituent services on the helping liaison between the council and us, and then legislatively.
Mayor,
Yeah.
The attainable housing.
Mm-hmm.
You put in motion quite a number of new initiatives, sort of a glide slope here, or for how this would be done in your term.
Mm-hmm.
How would you measure success? how do you wake up every day and say, are we succeeding, or are we just launch a process?
Yeah.
I mean, are we delivering
Well,
a need?
yeah, I think it's a fair question that, again, I think all the mayors of the country ask themselves is that, how quick can we realistically build housing, and is it ever going to keep up with demand? So, unfortunately, the amount of time that any project is going to take, whether it's a Baptist hospital project that could take 500 units potentially, or it's scattered sites, unfortunately, we find ourselves in this country, in this city, in a demand is rapidly outpacing not only supply, but the ability to provide that supply. So the next best thing we can do is what you've described and what I kind of call, our shotgun model, which is let's get as many of these projects and initiatives going as possible at scale. I would say, I think when I went and spoke about this topic about Hollis T. Williams at Harvard, they asked this question and said, if you could have a genie lamp and there's one thing you could change about attainable housing, what would it be? And what it would be for me is that all of us as citizens of this country, of this city, would actually engage and understand that housing at every level matters in terms of this is a simple supply and demand issue, whether it's market rate housing, whether it's $2,000 a month, $1,000 a month, homeless transitional, whether it's tiny houses, which are are allowed in the city but not necessarily allowed in the county, that allows for density. All of those different things need to be thrown into the equation, because the problem is what you described, John. The problem is how quick can a government, especially a government on their own, increase the supply inventory. We have to have private partners. We have to have people investing in our city. So when 280 units go up in our city, whether they're market rate or they're affordable, that is chipping away at the demand problem. And I think many times citizens may look at it in a silo and say, well, if that 280 apartment complex isn't for me, then it's not helping anything. And I would argue that that's false. I would say we need to have supply and inventory at every level, and we need to be encouraging supply at every level. This will not be solved solely by the government, by the county, by the city. All we can do is redo our land development code to make it more dense, get involved in projects like Baptist. We try to flail away at every scalable housing opportunity that we can provide. And so it really comes down to that. And there's lots of different opinions about people's solutions to solve housing. My opinion is we have a supply and demand problem. And if we snapped our fingers and we had 2,000 more units at every price point in the city, what would happen? Naturally, the rents would plateau because you've got supply. And actually, I just saw a couple of reports out of South Florida, Sarasota, Tampa area, where they're actually starting to see the needle move, that there's enough supply being created that it's helping plateau those rents. I don't know that I think maybe it's just the amount of private investment that's going in down there. But we've got to get inventory up and not treat every apartment project, condo project as those need to be vilified, but as a matter of fact, if we're ever going to solve this problem, we need housing at every single level. So we're trying to do our part with all of these different initiatives that you talked about, we hope we continue to see more and more private partners step up to the plate as well.
Well, on the Inspire project in Maritime Park, there's a good number of Inspire's got one way to describe attainable, affordable workforce. How would you describe their ambitions there in terms of the live local?
Yeah, well, right. I mean, obviously, it's live local outlines pretty clearly, what percentage at what AMI gives you what level of tax break, right? So, I would say Senate Bill 102 has helped. Live Local has helped in that sense that you rarely will hear a local government say, "I'd like to be preempted by a state law." But I think in this particular case, everybody had their own different definitions about how to catalyze affordable housing, and so I think having those guardrails for local municipalities has been valuable. That now, when someone approaches me and says, "Hey, what kind of tax break would you give us if we to subsidize affordable housing, well, there's already kind of a formulaic approach. So I would say first, that is valuable. Second is, I go back to the same thing. How do I define it? Listen, I think the missing middle, if you were really getting in the weeds, where my supply and demand logic could fail would be if we don't have enough of that missing middle, that 80 to 120. So there's lots of conversation and lots of hyperbole about low income, 30%, 60%, not in my backyard. And then there's lots of rhetoric about market rate and, wait, these are just luxury condos. That means this isn't helping. And I could refute both of those, but I think the truth really lies between 80 and 120, 80 and 100, really, in terms of, I think about our police officers, our firefighters, our teachers that can't afford to live in the city in which they work. And that argument of migration in affordable housing that I'm a firm believer in, which is when you build 100 market rate units in your community, within 2.5 years, that organically opens 41 affordable units because of people. There's 5 rounds of migration that take place over 2.5 years of time that actually organically just 41 open because of people moving up the scale. Well, they can't move up the scale if the missing middle isn't there. So we can have condos and we can have very low income, but if we aren't heavily invested into that 80 to 100, 80 to 120, then this whole supply argument kind of falls flat because that migration can't happen if you don't have the right amount of housing in that middle number. So that doesn't mean one's better than the other, but we do have to have a concerted focus on the workforce level housing because number one, I believe it's our largest target group in terms of living here. And number two is the supply and demand argument the mayor just made doesn't make any sense if you have to have it at every rung. And I think that's the heaviest rung that's being strained right now is that 80 to 120 area. So we'll see what happens. I mean, and so we continue to live local speaks directly to that, which means this maritime project speaks directly to that formula. So we encourage that and any other live local projects that come to us that we can help make happen.
Are there any other live local projects that you're aware of?
Not that are being proposed to us. I would say I know we have another meeting on Malcolm Young today. With the Community Land Trust, and I know you remember from that being approved, those target rents or target sales are in that workforce area I just described for that particular project. So I believe that's I think it's 12 units. It's either 12 or 14 of those townhouses that would get out into the pool. So that's probably the closest workforce side, but I'm not aware right now. Now we get emails all the time, but I mean something substantively that's moving forward. I'm not aware of anything at the moment.
Talking about things outside the city control that could affect these projects like Inspired, like Baptist Hospital. There's a lot of fears nationwide of recession with this policy at the federal level. I guess, are you thinking about or planning for how to handle any downturn in the economy that could affect these projects?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're like you guys. We have the same, we see the same headline and have the same conversations. What ifs, and I would say as Tim likes to say, the alligator closest to the canoe for us is more, threats to CRA and property tax. Probably we spend more time concerned about the massive negative impact that would have on city operations than kind of the global view. Not that it doesn't matter. I just mean those are the things that would be certainly more consequential to us than anything. But the ebbs and flows of how the market works and potential tariffs and what does that mean for development. Obviously we have our ear to the ground and we're in constant communication with these folks proposing hotels and apartments and all of that, and we do everything. There's not much we can control in that, but we just try to continue to be in close communication with them and understand that that of course there's a threat that things could change, but not much we can do about that at the local level other than be in good communication. And I think that is a re-emphasis, and we've been talking about this in the building, a re-emphasis of permitting, inspections, trying to make everybody's job to invest in the city as easy as possible. And I don't think you talk to any contractor or builder anywhere in the United States and they'd say permitting and planning and everything goes exactly the way I want to, right? I mean, it's one of those things where it's a hurdle for a reason. You know, we want to make sure you're building the right thing with the right quality and construction, but we also always want to hold up the mirror. So I think probably more than anything to your question, Jim, it's kind of highlighted things like that is, okay, what can we do? What can we control? Well, we can control maybe a more seamless process. Maybe can we narrow a window of time where it takes plans to go up and back? And so, you know, I know Sherry and Jonathan and her team are obviously that's top of mind for them all the time. And we're even having conversations about further increasing that communication with our local builders and investors and contractors to say that if we are in a situation like this, let's get going. From John's previous question about let's get housing built as soon as possible, as well as let's try to mitigate any of these unknown factors out of our control that could be the difference between a project happening and not. One way to try to mitigate that risk is to speed it up, you know, and so we're looking at those types of things. And I actually think the state legislature is too. I think there's a few different bills that have come across my desk where they're talking about within departments like permitting, you know, making it a little more business friendly, maybe a little bit less red tape.
Mayor, following up on Jim's thing here, putting property tax aside, what is the risk if the CRAs were to be legislated out of existence? What is the risk to the city?
Well, first of all, I mean, understand within the CRAs is, you know, we get the significant portion of the property tax in that affected area of which to then reinvest in that area. So, I mean, you know, lots of these projects that have been CRA funded that we are either in conversations about, whether that's Bruce Beach, whether that's the hashtag project, those are all CRA things in the urban core. Certainly, you know, it's interesting. There's been conversation about, well, how much for Baptist Hospital, you know, there's been some rhetoric about, well, how much money does the West Side CRA have, you know, in the city, which is where Baptist is located. And, you know, in our mind, we've earmarked whatever funding in CRA because when this demo is complete, there's this weird presumption that, like, all the costs are over. I expect that the city is going to have millions of dollars more in cost, whether it's site prep, whether it's lighting, whether it's new streets that need to be cut through. We're just scratching the surface of our investment financially into this. All we've been focused on is the demolition pricing. But I would love for that to be a fact, that after we pay for the demo, the city's off the financial hook. But I have a strong suspicion that the West Side CRA is going to continue to be investing in this Baptist project to make it happen well after the demolition is complete. So that's an example. You know, there's funding in this West Side CRA to help spur building hundreds of potential homes or and education opportunity and all of that stuff too. So I think it allows us to focus. I would think the county would agree with their CRAs. I think it allows you to ensure that the vulnerable areas in our city and growing business areas in our city have the investment for us to continue to pour into them and continue to see that growth. I think we've had some success. We can show success in that. So certainly I think that would be a big negative impact on us.
Mayor, what's the status of Palafox project there?
I believe April 20. We should have 100% design on April 21st. So this month, we would have had it sooner, but remember, you recall we were about 60-80% design in, and you know, I kind of looked around the room and said, you know, to spend this amount of money to reimagine Palafox and not hardwire in the safety protocols that we would need, bollards, things like that. You know, we weren't having those conversations early, you know, as intensely, you know, late last year. So that's the cause for the delay in the 100% design is integrating more semi-permanent and/or permanent bollard and you know, pedestrian safety infrastructure. So you know, now I'm just bracing for the price tag increase. We'll see what that is, but we should have those on April 21st, and then at that point be able to get it out to bid and work on schedule. One conversation I'm trying to mitigate, especially with downtown business owners, is, well, are you going to do the work during the day? Are you going to do work at night? There's lots of speculation as to how the project will work. Those are conversations we can't even physically have until we know who's doing the project. But those are things top of mind for us, is we know the value of Palafox. We know that we are going to have very detailed conversations with whoever would eventually be building it for us about what's the right way to do it. Do we just knock out a block in a week or 2 weeks, and then maybe it's painful for those 2 weeks, and then we move on, or do we do half during the day and half at night? Those are all very long, detailed conversations that we're going to have. We just can't have them yet because we have no one to talk to. We don't know who's going to build it. So we got the order of events is design, get it out for bid. Then when we know who's within that RFP, it will be we will be sharing that information about what we want to see. And then, of course, once we have a winning bidder, we will negotiate with them based on how all of that will work. So, but we are not under any kind of timeline. We're not rushing to this. We obviously want to time it out. We know there's holiday shopping. We know there's parades. We know all of that. There's what I can tell you, Rick, right now for sure is there's no easy way to do this where it only gets built on the first 2 weeks of January and then we're done. That's not going to happen. There's going to be some pain in our progress, but we are going to be very mindful and overt about making sure that we control that the best way we can.
The other project an update on is American Magic.
Yes.
Their headquarters, where are we with that? Are we going to hit the September deadline?
I'll have to look at the exact, that's the last timeline I saw had that. But we're working on, as we speak, I'm not sure if it will get, if we're going to hold the agenda a little bit and get it on the agenda, or if it'll be an immediate add-on, which is an amendment to their lease. All of those terms have been worked out. We just, in terms of, obviously we had increased costs. You'll see they're advancing some rent, some things like that in the amendment. For example, right now there's an amendment that says if it's not done by December 31st, it's null and void. Well, obviously that's not going to happen. Number one, it should be done before December 31st, and number two is no one's walking away. I mean, we're all here. American Magic's here. The project's well underway. But getting that amended lease then secures the funding in the approval, secures the funding for the rest of the project. So the work that you see out there right now is kind of phase one of the work, the repairs to the existing structure. And then phase two, which is the vast majority of that funding, which will dovetail seamlessly from phase one, will take us into the fall. I'd have to get you an exact date.
So when you talk about funding, that means the state funds come in? Is that
No, I also mean whatever funds from American Magic, grant funds. In other words, I can't procure a project. We can't have somebody working on a project without having the funds identified. So, for example, it doesn't have to be that the check is in from American Magic advancing lease fees, for example, but we have to have a contract that says they owe to us by this fiscal year or whatever the case may be. So, but that's what the timeliness of this and why we would even, if it's potentially an add-on, it would be, if it is, it'll be Wednesday. It'll be right after. And we've been in communication with Don and council staff on that. Because what we don't want to do is if we don't get this on, then you could, when a crew's already out there and then the work isn't going and then the crew leaves, right. You don't know when that crew's coming back or that crane's coming back. So the seamless transition from phase one of repair to phase two of construction is pretty important to us. So I don't like doing add-ons. That would be, if it ends up being an add-on, we may get it on the regular agenda. It'll be hours after it had come out, and that would be wise because we don't want to take on increased costs or delays because of having to wait for another council meeting. So, but we feel very good about where we're at. Again, American Magic's already here. We've been working closely with them. Costs, like everything else, have risen, but I'm very appreciative of our team getting resourceful. I appreciate American Magic kind of working with us on that as well, in terms of making sure that we have the funding ready to go without having to tap into city funds or CRA funds or anything like that. So we're probably looking at about a $17 million project that at one point an early cost estimate conversation was in the 11-12 range. So I think the fact that we were able to incur that and solve that issue without necessarily having to tap into, again, general funds or LOST or CRA. We've been able to do it through grants, through advancing rent, things as you'll see in that amended lease. Certainly proud of that effort, and it keeps us on track to be ready to go in the fall.
So let me recap. So where we are right now is repairs are finished or about to be finished. Mm-hmm. We've got to get the new grant, the new amendments to the agreement to work out the financing for the construction phase, and they're ready to start construction.
That's correct.
So all that should start this month.
And so if it ends up even being an add-on, which is up in the air today, what I can tell you is our city attorney and their attorney, we're in full agreement. It's just a matter of how quick can we get signatures and all of that stuff. So there's no discussion or debate left on the actual lease amendment itself. It's ready.
So we're moving into construction.
That's correct.
Okay,
And well, we're moving.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
abbreviate the answer.
Yes, we're moving into construction, and it's vital to get it on this agenda so we don't have a 3-week delay and cranes start leaving and things like that, and that would have caused not only financial but time delays in the project. So that's the why behind why you might see that as an add-on. It's not because we just flippantly did it. It would be because timing is of the essence to make sure that we work forward.
Mayor, apparently there's movement on the Bayfront Parkway multi-use path. Could you give us an update on what's going on?
Yeah, I'd need to check.
I watched a couple with 2 kids do a suicide run
Across,
trying
yeah.
to get over to the park the other day,
Yep.
and I thought about that.
Yeah, and obviously you guys know the work that's happening down there right now is that stormwater related, that $2 million Main Street project. You know how they've changed lanes over there. That's the work that you're seeing as we sit here today. Now the design is full steam ahead for the mixed use path with FDOT. They've had some meetings. We've helped steward some meetings between some of the stakeholders, the Bike Pensacola's and the wheelmen and things like that with FDOT. We've also kind of set aside some landscape, design on the city side. We certainly appreciate the funding, and it's going to be at last check $4 million. And you know how these things go. If that was $4 million a year ago, it might be 5 or 6 now. And so for the state to step up and help fund that project is great. But we also want it to look nice when it's done, and we want to make sure that it's is aesthetically pleasing as possible. So if the city was going to incur any costs in this project, it would probably be tied to that kind of landscape improvements and landscape design. But we're not quite there yet. I know that FDOT, we can get you a timeline. FDOT has been full bore on the actual design of it, but it continues to move forward. So I'm very excited for that opportunity to have a 12-foot path protected from cars that connects the 3 Mile Bridge all the way into the port, all the way into downtown. And so I think that'll be a huge amenity for us. An asset for both our residents and our visitors. So excited to continue to see that.
It will actually go from 17th Street up to...
It'll go from the 3 Mile Bridge, all the way to basically the entrance to the port is phase 1. Now, we also proposed a phase 2 of Sun Trail funding that they've shown some interest in. It's not moving as quickly ahead, but that would be basically from the port to Bayou Chico, all the way through the city. And that, some complication at Joe Patty's and East Street and where do you put it, but nothing that can't be overcome. But I think FDOT's interest was piqued a little more on the Bayfront portion of it, which makes sense because of the bridge, because of how much traffic is going up and down that road. So it would remain 4-lane. That is still the plan. And but you'd now have that protected lane instead of having that sidewalk hugged up right against the drain right there.
Mayor, on the Baptist Hospital demolition, looking past the county, assuming you get the funding and everything, when do you expect work to begin on that? And also, when do you expect discussions to begin as far as what comes after the demolition?
Yeah, good question. So because of the bid process, we would be moving reasonably quickly, because when you have a qualified bid and a winning bid, they're not going to hold to that bid, as we just kind of the theme of the day, whether it's American Magic or any other or Sun Trail, project price only goes up. I have not, as long as I'm mayor, no one's ever come into me and said the price went down on a project. So so with that in mind, obviously the winning bidder, I assume, I don't know how long, if it's 90 days, 120 days, or 180, but the winning bidder is going to put a timeline on saying we honor this price for this amount of time. So, from that sense, it's not like we're going to pick a winning firm and then we're going to hang out for a year. That's not the case. It's gonna happen quickly. But what I've continued to commit to the surrounding neighborhood, and when I emailed County Commissioner Barry, was board chair at the time, and Wes in January of 2024, I outlined what I thought would be good expectations for the city and for the county in terms of what the citizens should expect from us. I think it was like first week of January of 24. And it talks about covenant for the community. It talks about being able to offer affordable housing opportunity to the surrounding neighborhood in whatever mechanisms we can. I think those are all things that would be important. If I were the county, I would want to make sure that those interests are protected, and certainly I propose them. I want those to be things that are good for the city as well. But what I've pledged this entire time to the surrounding neighborhood and to the city is that we will not send a wrecking ball through anything until we have started the engagement of conversation about what the community wants. So I continue to pledge that. So what I would hope, Jim, timeline-wise, is April 3rd. This Thursday afternoon, we'll know what the price is. We'll have our conversations with the county and hopefully finalize the donation agreement this month. And then my hope would be at some point in May, maybe June, we will have a clear plan and timeline for community engagement. Now, I'm not saying community engagement is going to be complete before demolition. Obviously, that's a longer process. But I have pledged that what I don't want is someone walking out their front door or down their street, seeing a wrecking ball going through a building and saying, well, they've already decided. We haven't decided. The community matters in this, and I stand behind our record of community engagement and enhancing community engagement, and that will be no exception here. So step one, get the pricing, get the funding. Step two, the donation agreement could happen concurrently. Step three, start community engagement. Step four would be the actual demolition. All of those would take place this year.
What does the community engagement look like to you?
Yeah, we've had some good success with some firms. For example, UDA did a great job with the CRA update. I don't know who is going to do it. Eric and I are working through that. But because of the amount of bandwidth that we expect community engagement to have, you guys have started to see this pattern. We've kind of outsourced it, where someone's waking up every day doing it. And I think governments in the past have kind of, not just here, anywhere, have kind of said, hey, we'll handle community engagement, and then it might be one meeting in here for an hour, and then we say 4 people showed up, and well, I guess we've done our duty. And I think getting the city out of the, that's not what our staff does. That's not what we're experts in. Let's get experts in the field of making sure that we're piquing the interest and reaching out to the neighbors and asking the right questions. It's okay that the city or the county or the state doesn't have that expertise in the building. So I usually gear towards doing somebody who does this for a living and making sure. And I feel like we've had good success with, whether it's Hollis T. Williams right now, CRA, strategic plan, all of those come from the same cloth, right? It's just bringing in national or international experts to help us extract all the information we need from the community to have a good plan moving forward. So I don't know who that will be, but that's definitely the direction we're going to go. Anything else? All right, guys, thank you.